Good day, folks. The following video is going to be done in an effort of giving you additional tips and pretty much good practices when doing union presentations and laptop presentations in the field. What you're going to find is that if in the beginning you're able to establish good habits and be able to do the right things over and over and over until they become part of you or part of your overall presentation, it's going to get easier and easier and easier the longer you're here. This business, really, in the beginning, you're giving a presentation, you go out with a manager, you see them perform. In many cases, you're going to look at what they do and think, wow, that seems very easy. I can probably do that too. But a lot goes into a presentation that is unsaid, unspoken, that makes an impact at the end in your sales. So I want to be able to have this as a library of information for brand new people so that you can get always additional advice, tips, and things that aren't necessarily on the script, but we do these things in the home, and they do make a big difference on your sales at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year. So having said that, I'm not going to spend too much time on per se the script or what we say in the presentation, but I'm going to spend time right now on what are the things that are done in the home in combination with the script, in combination to what you have to do with the laptop, that add value to your presentation and that ultimately are going to get you more sales. This business is judged by results, and at the end of the week you need to have the results in terms of production, sales, ALP that you have to be writing to be able to make money here. So and like I said, in the script, I mean, you can read the script and in some cases you're not interpreting the script correctly, and when you're not interpreting things correctly, the way you say things and the way you do things may not come out the way they need to come out, and it's going to ultimately affect your sales. So let me get started. The first tip and piece of advice I'm going to give you is whenever you go into someone's home, it is common courtesy, folks, that you're going to want to ask the family if you should take your shoes off. I mean, this may seem silly to some of you that are watching this video right now, but it's common courtesy. We are in Canada, and in Canada, it snows half the year, and the majority of people do remove their shoes when they go into someone else's home. Now, I gotta tell you honestly, there's gonna be times where you're not gonna want to remove your shoes because there's maybe a lot of stuff on the floor and things like that. But out of common courtesy, you're always gonna ask them if you should remove your shoes. In some cases they'll tell you no, it's okay, keep your shoes on. In some cases they'll say yes, please remove your shoes and leave them there, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the minute you step out of your vehicle, and now this is going back, because the presentation, folks, really starts the minute you get out of your car. The minute you step out of your vehicle, you need to be very observant of the surrounding of this house, i.e., are they the type who have a very nice garden? People who have a very nice garden spend time in their garden, take care of their garden. A nice garden just doesn't happen like that, is because people take care of it, right? So that can give you something to talk about. If you see and you notice that there's beautiful plants on the outside, and that they have that, it may give you a topic of conversation once you're in the home. So that's the first thing. You want to be observant of the surroundings of the home, and what are the things that you notice that you can then utilize as a topic of conversation or something that you can talk about once you're in the home. Do not say things that are too general about their home, such as you have a beautiful home. I find that being very, it's too general. It's not specific enough, and in some cases, you may say it's a nice home, but maybe they don't like their own home, things like that. So the one piece of advice I can give you is whenever you go into someone's home, try to find something specific that you can comment on, very specific to be specific to you, so that they can appreciate the fact that you noticed something about their home. So gardening is one example, right? The other thing is the minute you walk into someone's home, you need to be very observant of certain things. For example, if they're the type who have tons of pictures on the walls, that typically means they're extremely family-oriented people, and people that obviously cherish and love their families. Not that others don't, but it's just different. So you may comment on the pictures, specifically if there's a lot of children's pictures on the walls. This may mean these are their children or grandchildren, depending on where you're visiting. And there's nothing that lightens people up more than you asking about their children. Children's are people's, treasure, and when you can talk about the kids, it can always bring people down to a level where, they lighten up, they feel great talking about their kids because it's the thing that they love the most in their life. So pointing out pictures about the children really, really definitely works in most cases. Or grandchildren. And in some cases, I have found that you can go into someone's home and let's say they had pictures on the wall, but you didn't make a comment on the pictures, but then somehow you got into the topic of grandchildren. Quite often this will happen is they themselves will get up, go and grab the picture to bring it back and show it to you. And that what that tells you is that for this person, their children are so important. They pretty much, it's part of their life now. It is for grandparents, but that's how great they feel about them. And remember, folks, we're in the people business, and we are in the business of making people feel great for what they're going to do with us. But that's only going to happen provided they like and trust the agent. And these are tips I'm giving you on rapport building, on things that you can do to get someone to like you and trust you. With this laptop presentation, one of the things that you have to understand is that your job, whenever you go into someone's home, the first thing you have to accomplish is you have to get them to trust you and like you. If you cannot do that successfully, your job is it's going to be more difficult to get the sale. Not that you cannot get a sale at the end, even though your rapport building was kind of choppy or it could have been better. It just makes it so much easier. And what I've learned in my years of experience in training many people is that at the end, when you're closing, if you did a great job in the presentation, you're going to find that you have very little or no objections at all. And that typically happens when you did a great job in your presentation. When you do a poor job in your presentation, quite often you have to close and try and close and close. And it becomes more of a wrestling match where you're saying yes, they're saying no, and at the end you may not even close, and you spent half an hour trying to convince someone to take a policy, when in fact all you have to do is spend more time at the beginning trying to get them to trust you, so that at the end whatever recommendations you would make, they would actually act on your recommendation. So there's many things you can talk about. So we talked about the surroundings of the house. We've talked about pictures on the walls. There's another thing, and this is where you have to do your own homework. I work out of the Toronto office, and I know that in Toronto and in the greater Toronto area, there is people from all walks of life and from all over the world. And that's really the thing, from all over the world. And I really mean the world. We got the whole world here. Seriously. So what I have learned that really makes a difference working in the greater Toronto area is knowing about other countries and knowing a lot about other cultures, right? And this is going to be different, again, depending on where you work. If you're watching this video, that means you work out of the Toronto office, obviously. But what I'm trying to say here is that you want to get educated on other countries. As you go along here and as you go in the field, you're going to find that you're seeing the same type of people over and over and over and over. And there's certain cultures that are very dominant when it comes to certain unions. I'll give you an example. If we're working with a construction worker, a layuna worker, or a carpenter, there's a high chance that these people are going to be of European background, i.e. Portuguese, Italian, Polish, Croatian, and you owe it to yourself as an agent to learn about these countries and to learn about the people in these countries, simply because that gives you something to talk about whenever you go out and visit a family from that part of the world. So like that, that's just one part of the world, Europeans, but it could be any part of the world, it doesn't matter. You, as the person, as a professional, you want to get educated on these people's traditions, cultures, You want to know places of their country, etc., etc., etc. And I know this is a fact. You know, I have one of my best friends who works for American Income Life out of California, where you know, 2/3 of the population speak Spanish. There's a lot of Mexican families, and you know, he's not Mexican, but he knows a lot about Mexico, places in Mexico, and you know, he goes in, and when it's a Mexican family, obviously he does speak Spanish himself, you know, he's able to relate immediately because he's got something to talk about. Why? Because he has taken the time to do his homework to learn about those people. So that's another thing that's really important. So we talked about the surroundings outside of the house. We talked about the inside of the house, how observant you need to be. We talked about different cultures and the importance of being able to have something to talk about. And this is, again, something that you have to be creative enough to find something to talk about. That's your homework. I tell you, I'm passionate about soccer, and I know that 80% of the time if I'm talking to Europeans, they're going to be passionate about soccer too. So right away I can strike up a conversation about, you know, a certain team in that country. No matter what country they're from, I'll know something about that, you know, country's soccer team or players, etc., etc., etc. And quite often it's so shocking to them that I would actually know something about their country that the average person wouldn't know. And what that does is it creates a positive emotion that they're going to have toward me, which then opens the door so I can gain more trust with the individual and be able to establish somewhat of a friendship immediately, because all of a sudden I know something about his country that chances are he didn't even expect me to know. So this is where I have done my homework, and I know many things about many countries of the world. Why? Because I know that in the greater Toronto area, chances are you're going to visit people from every corner of the world, and I'm not kidding when I say every corner of the world. So that's part of your homework as an agent for American Income Life in the greater Toronto area, to learn about other cultures, I'm going to say. The next thing that you really want to avoid, and it's something so important obviously that is not part of the scripts, is you want to be organized. One of the things that I found is that whenever you're in someone's home, the level of organization you have with your folder, with your laptop, says a lot to them. Remember, as the face of the company, you are talking to families who are prospects for us, who would hopefully be customers by the end of your presentation, and they judge everything that you're doing, both consciously and unconsciously. If you're going into someone's home and you're highly disorganized with your folder, with the way you handle the freebies and everything, they're going to judge our company as a disorganized company. Now, here's the thing, they'll never say that to you, but they will think that of you and the company. So the one thing that takes almost no effort to do is make sure you're organized, make sure you have your folders in order, make sure your papers are in order, make sure you bring in a nice, clean, crisp folder into the home, because all of these things will make an effect. I used to think they didn't. I have found everything counts in sales. Everything you do counts, everything you don't do counts, everything you say counts, how you say it counts, everything you don't say counts. Everything in sales counts. Every action either gets you closer to getting this person to become a member or a customer, and everything that you do also either gets him closer or further away from you, or from the transaction, from closing the sale. So make sure of that you're organized. Another thing is make sure your computer is running. Now, at the beginning of every field day, you want to make sure your battery is fully charged. You want to make sure that you have your laptop software loaded up and ready to go and ready to rock and roll. There's nothing more embarrassing, I guess, than to bring up your computer and to realize that it wasn't working even before you started. So you'll waste time, they'll see you as incompetent, unprepared, and in most cases they're not going to buy from you because you're not prepared. So take the time to prepare when you go out in the field. It's like performing artists, they check their sound, they make sure the lights are working before the show starts. And when you're in the field, you are performing. I love to say it's showtime. and you want to make sure everything is functional and everything is working for you. Your folders are in order, you got all the freebies that you need, your computer is in order, it's working, it's functional, and you're ready to rock and roll when you're out there. Another piece of advice, folks, is when you're in the field, you want to be able to look your best, okay? Here are the things that you want to avoid while you're in the field. Avoid heavy meals when you're in the field. I say this, have a good meal before you leave the field, and avoid heavy meals while you're in the field. When you eat heavily while you're in the field, it doesn't create a good sensation when after that you actually have to give a presentation. I always say this, have snacks in your car, healthy snacks I would recommend, while you're in the field so that they can keep you going. Bottles of water, power bars, fruits are great, okay? Nothing heavy though. Make sure you, like I said earlier, look your best. You're dressed professionally. There's no such thing as being overdressed, in my opinion. I know some people in the company may argue with this, where, you know, you're going to union members, you shouldn't overdress. I highly disagree with that. I think that if you are a professional, you should dress as a professional. And I can't think of trusting a lawyer that is underdressed, and doesn't look like a lawyer or like someone who's a professional. So you provide a service that has an immense social impact for families, and that makes you a professional. And as a professional, you should dress like one, act like one, talk like one, look like one. So make sure you dress professionally. You're sharply dressed. You don't have wrinkled clothes on you, and your clothes are dirty. I mean, I'm saying these things, and I really think that it's common sense. But just to make sure it's not common sense, if it's not common sense for some of you, I'm telling you now, dress professionally, look like $1 million, okay? Smell great. It's really bad if someone doesn't smell good when you're making a presentation. So they can smell whatever they smell, the members, but you need to you need to look like $1 million. So being organized, looking your best, we talked about those things. The other thing that I found to a degree, I don't like doing it in people's homes, is whenever I go into someone's home, I put my cell phone on silent, okay? I don't really think it's necessary to answer a phone call where you're trying to make a presentation to somebody else. If I see it's an emergency maybe, and it's a family member of mine who's calling, then I'll excuse myself and pick up the phone. But at the same time, I'm trying to give 100% of my attention to the member. And as that, my body language and everything I do has to match with what I want to portray, which is, I'm with you 100%. That's what I'm telling the person. So put your cell phone on silent, and also, folks, be very good at listening. I have found in my years of experience that whenever new people go into the home, in some cases you'll be nervous, and I guess that's okay in the beginning. But what I have also found is that a lot of people sometimes are not listening to everything the customer and the members are saying. And what I mean by that is this: there's a lot of information that is given to you, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, through the presentation. Your ability to catch everything and retain that information so that you don't have to re-ask questions later on makes a big difference on your presentation, because what you're telling someone without really telling them this is you're telling them that you're listening, that you're paying attention, and that you are with them 100%. Remember, folks, they don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And by that I mean they want to make sure that you are there for them and that you are there to do something for them, okay? And for them to believe that and for them to feel that way, they have to legitimately see you as a caring person for their needs, for their insurance needs. So listening makes a huge difference. Make sure you are paying attention to everything they're saying, how they're saying it, when they're saying it, and retain information. Train yourself to know their names before you get there. Train yourself to call them by their names. I've heard people talk to the member and saying, your wife, and the wife's right there, and they say your wife, but the person's right there. And you shouldn't do that. You should say Jim and Mary and call people by their names. There's that effect whenever you say someone's name, they always look to you. They always look at you when you're calling someone by their name. So never call the wife when she's right there. Call her by her name and look at her. Make sure also, folks, when you're making a presentation to husband and wife, that you engage both of them in the presentation. Quite often I've seen people make a presentation, they make the mistake of only talking to one person. And in some cases, you don't know who the decision maker is. You know, he may wear the pants, but she chooses the color. And it may be her who calls the shots at the end, or it may be him. But in some cases, there's a tendency, and I know a lot of people have done this in the field, and because I did it too, we tend to take the path of least resistance when we're in someone's home. What does that mean? We tend to talk to the easy person, the one that's getting along with us, answering all the, going along with the presentation and sort of engaging us with the presentation. And to a degree, we tend to ignore the difficult one, and that's who we need to talk to more in some cases, because the easy one will say yes at the end no matter what. But the one that you need to convince is the one that's not talking a whole lot, that may be looking at you, their arms may be crossed, etc., etc., etc. So it's very important that you engage both husband and wife in the presentation. And the easiest ways to make sure you're engaging both is to call both their names whenever you talk to one. Always look at the other and make sure you look at them. They're just not just calling their names, but you're also looking at them when you're talking. Very, very important. The next thing, folks, is you have to be able to speak with conviction. The one thing, people will always like to do business with people that look and sound confident as to what they're doing or saying. There's no replacement for that. You have to be loud, clear, and speak with conviction. This, I tell you, has no replacement. This is so important in your presentation. This is why you want to make sure when you're out in the field, you have practiced your presentation, however many times you need to practice your presentation until you get it right. Okay? It's really bad if you're going in the field and you're forgetting what you have to do. You look clumsy with your presentation. You're all over the place. And even though I say this, there's still families that are going to buy from you in spite of how poor you presented, because I say people are very forgiving, and even though your presentation may suck, they still bought from you. That doesn't mean you're going to earn other people's business, because some people can be sold provided your presentation is where it needs to be, and the presentation earns the business. Some other people you don't have to sell, you just have to be nice, they'll like you, and they'll buy from you even though you had a lousy presentation. So, and some other people, no matter what you do, God himself can be there with you and they're still not going to buy. However, your level of confidence and competence in the home comes through the way you communicate, okay? When you're in someone's home, folks, the first thing is you decide where they sit down. You ask, is there a kitchen table that we can use? And you get them to sit down where you tell them. This doesn't mean you're rude. It means you're simply very clear, you're loud, not as in you're yelling at them, but you're simply speaking, Jim, why don't you sit here, Mary, you sit here, that way I can talk to both you guys and look at you and hand you the benefits. So they're very simple requests, and folks, it's very, very important that you listen to yourself when you're talking also, and ask yourself, am I sounding convincing enough? And see, body language and tone are more important than the actual words that you say. Okay? They say 80% of communication is nonverbal, meaning it's not what you say, but how you say it. So even though you may know the words in the script, if you're not saying the words with enough conviction, they're not going to have the effect they need to have. And envision this, folks. The presentation is an emotional presentation in the sense that you need to pluck emotional chords on these people, on the families, and you're only going to be able to do that if you yourself speak with conviction. You obviously combine the audiovisual effect that the laptop has. Good news is the laptop will always sound crisp. It will not miss a beat and will always say what it needs to say because it's a machine. You are not a machine, you are a human being. There has to have that 50-50 element, you know. We know the laptop will take care of what the laptop has to do. You know, we know the laptop will say the things the laptop has to say, and we can pretty much trust that the laptop will do its job correctly. You then have to do your part by commanding the presentation in a fashion that, combined with the laptop, you deliver a powerful sales presentation to get the business and to get the sales. So the level of confidence that you have when you go into someone's home is portrayed rather by your tone, by your body language, by the way you look at them, and really the level of sincerity that you have in the home. Folks, you know, you have to be real. People today are built like, you know, they detect insincerity. They're built like that already. So, and it's not like you're being insincere in some cases, but your lack of competence in the presentation will show, and it will show in your results either way. So, I mean, these are things, folks, that are not discussed in the script, and I wanted to make this video in an effort of giving you these tips so that you keep them in mind and you keep them in check also. As you go in the field, there are two things that determine success at American Income Life. Activity is number one. You got to go out there and see enough people. You are not going to sell everyone you see, but if you are seeing enough people, hopefully you're honing your presentation skills so that you're going to attain a closing ratio that will allow you to reach your goals and ALP targets. So activity is number one. And number two, you know, it's not just the activity, you have to have the right presentation, you know. So activity doesn't necessarily lead to accomplishment, because if you have a lousy presentation, you can go in the field all day long, you're still not going to close. So it starts first having the activity, but also doing a good job in the home, having a good presentation. Because if you have the activity, you have a lousy presentation, not only will you not close enough sales, you'll also waste, you know, leads, waste your time, and really, to a degree, let the families down, because in some cases these families needed the coverage, but because you gave them a lousy performance or a lousy presentation, they're not going to buy from you. They'll still buy from somebody else, that I tell you, just not from you that day because your presentation sucked. So keep those in check, activity and presentation. I say this, in the first 6 months that you're with this company, you owe it to yourself to practice your presentation each and every single week. And there is no better use of your time than to make sure you are doing things right. We have in the office not one but 2 cameras available, so you can put yourself on video, check it, get a manager, get somebody who is experienced to look at your presentation, and become a critic of yourself so that you can push yourself to become better at what you do in the home. And again, if American Income is how you're going to provide for yourself and your family, I can't think of anything more important than to make sure that your presentation is one that will get you results, and it is one that will, again, you're in the field, you're making money for yourself and your family, you want to make sure you have that presentation down, and that it's one that is worthy of people giving you business. And in this business, folks, what you're going to find is that, you know, you may go to somebody, that person doesn't buy from you, that same person will be visited by somebody else a month later, 2 months later, and they'll purchase. It's not because the person, you know, wasn't a buyer, and you know, the person who went after you made them a buyer. Chances are it's because the person who was there first gave them a lousy presentation. The person who went after gave them a good presentation, and that's why they're buyers today. So 99% of the time, it all goes back to presentation. So activity and your presentation are the 2 factors you got to consider in this business. If you have high levels of activity, you're seeing 12 to 15 families a week, combined with a powerful presentation, the sky's the limit. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Watching it only once will not do you any good. So I hope a week from now you're watching this again, or 2 weeks from now, and you watch it at least 7 to 14 times till these things sink in. Okay? Thank you.